Alright, I know it's been a while, guys, since I made a last video, but I'm just gonna go ahead and make this one. Let me see if I can figure out how to put this in a slideshow. See, the thing is, I know it's in here. Okay, here we go. So this is the guide to writing guides, and the whole idea behind this is I wanted to get more people into the guide writing business, because basically it's currently ruled by rating, and I feel it's not so much because the reason it's ruled by rating isn't so much because people are incompetent to write high level guides. I think it's more that people who aren't at the highest rating won't have the tools in terms of having the writers and people do it for them. Someone who's at the normal level may not be the best at English or writing in general. I'm not the best, but I follow this guideline, which I thought of myself to make my own guides, and they all come out pretty great, in my opinion. Some people may disagree. Now, I used Og Master Yi as a background because he's basically what started this whole career. He's literally the reason for my whole success, and I get really sad every time I realize that he'll never come back. It's never gonna be the same. I'll never get to play him again. But that's besides the point. Let's get to it. So 10 keys to quality. You got item coverage, character information, strategy, situational matchups, tips and tricks, personal preferences, choosing your host, and ensuring that guide works at all levels of play. Bam, simple, right? Okay, so you're like, okay, 10 things. Doesn't sound too hard, right? But each of these things I'm going to get into depth of, and they could get pretty dysfunctional. So make sure you're not only just listening to me, but reading pretty carefully. There's going to be typos and stuff in here, but don't worry about it. Just get the information across. Again, I'm not the best writer. I don't have any degree. None of that. So I'm not going to read the slide word for word, but I will give you some information based off of what's on here. Now, when I say item coverage, I want you to pick your items that you use every day. Give people basically the reasons why, and when it comes to like items who are a little bit more situational, like, can you justify them being in your standard build? If not, put them in situational items. Bam, pretty simple. I go into more depth as a reading. That would be the case for everything. I'm not trying to flood you guys with a lot of talking. I want you guys to actually like be able to pause the video, mute it, not worry about what I'm saying, and read the slide, and then get your information in. But setup will basically cover runes and masteries. You want it to fit all situations. You don't want to have runes and masteries that will not work depending on who you're facing or what the enemies are picking. Bam. So let's go into the more advanced section. Now, this covers the difference between alternative items and situational items. Alternative items I identify as ones that are interchangeable, that do not make a huge difference on gameplay. They can make some, but they're mostly preference based. Situational items are ones that if you get, that you should probably really consider getting in certain situations, such as Mercutio Scimitar. If there's like a Warwick Malzahar, is a very situational item that you should get to directly counter those. Now, you also could set up a list of optional runes and masteries, which is very helpful because you'll find that runes and masteries, while there's always going to be a set you could use in every game, if you take your time to maybe like alter your glyphs or seals, depending on whether you're facing more magic or more physical damage, you can gain an advantage through that. So just include some optional runes if you feel they should be there. But your set standard runes should always be good for every match, regardless of what they pick or what they do. It should be solid enough to be usable in every situation. Character role / role definition. Okay, this one's a little bit more complex. There's a lot of, this is pretty wordy, I must admit, but I'm going to sum it up. So, if your character's role is to hard carry the game, you should be focusing your guide on teaching people how to hard carry the game. Now, if they're hard carrying from the jungle or lane, focus it around that and teach them what they need to know. Avoid teaching a hard carry how to tank. He doesn't need that information, and it won't be beneficial to him to include it in the guide. So if you have a very versatile character, for example, let's say Jax is very versatile. You wouldn't want to teach AP Jax and the combo burst somebody, dodge to get out type combo to Fire Jax, who's supposed to get in there, get his dodge on a team, ulti and fight. You want to have the differentiation between those playstyles and not have a crowded guide that is attempting to cover every role, because when you do that, you give disjointed information. Meaning what you just taught them is now useless if they're doing this. You want to avoid that when writing a guide. You want to teach them how to play, how your guide is teaching them how to play, and leave some gray area. I mean, if they want to pick up a defensive item when they're playing hard carry, give them that option, But don't tell them build Sunfire Cape, Warmonks, Ramduin's Omen as your first 3 items, and then teach them that they're going to hard carry, So that's basically this sort of thing. You want to have the differentiation. Now let's get to a little bit more advanced things. Now, every character, while they have their role, jungle and what, they have a certain niche that they have to fill out. And to do that, you have to teach, in order for them to succeed in their niche or role, you have to teach them what they must do. So a solo hard carry like Master Yi must find ways to solo kill people, position himself well in team fights not to get focused, and only leave his jungle and leave the whole farming thing when ganks are guaranteed. Fair enough. So take a look at this. It's pretty important. I just summed it up a little bit. And let's move on to the next slide in a couple seconds. Strategies and tactics. So this is almost interchangeable, and I suggest that you don't try to define them, because when you try to define them, it gets very confusing. However, for the purpose of that, I'm going to define them in the sense that strategies will be an overall plan, and tactics will be minor things inside it that you can do to succeed in your overall plan. So, with that being said, try not to differentiate this stuff, because I might not even be 100%. For example, to you, counter jungling could be a strategy and not so much as a tactic. But I find counter jungling a tactic within pushing the strategy of pushing your advantage hard, Different things. So for the purpose of your guide, you can have them differentiated, but keep them close together, and don't confuse the reader too much with the idea of trying to separate the two. That being said, just read this over and make sure you understand it. Your definition of what's a strategy or tactic could be slightly different or completely different from mine, but this is just my thoughts. I'm not an English major, so this is what I got for you. Situational information. Okay, this one is one that I try to keep close to me, but certain things are a good play is a good play. Oh my bad, I accidentally went. A good play is a good play. That's a fact. A bad play is a bad play. However, in certain situations, you gotta have a certain level of knowledge in order to make bad situations better and good situations great. However, this comes to a big problem in guides where people will be commanding you to do something. So they'll say, oh, when jungler starts red, you want to start on the same side as them. While that does give you a slight advantage, only if you are able to counter gank that jungler. However, if I told you always do this, that would be commanding you to thinking there is no other way but to do this, And when you do that, you completely erase the gray area, which if I'm playing a weak early jungler, why would I attempt to counter gank a strong early jungler like Vi? You know? It's that way, by avoiding commanding, you leave the person their knowledge to assess the gray area and succeed in a situation, you know? So that's my thought on. Read this over again. I want you to read every slide because I put a lot of work into this, and I feel it may help. Matchups, counters, and synergy. Okay, now there's a big discrepancy when it comes to matchup. You know, people say, "Oh, if Riven counters this person, or this, or Darius counters this person." Now, the thing is, I call matchups. I decide by does an aspect in the opponent's kit disable your kit? For example, if you were melee and facing Swain with no gap closer, Swain has a snare and slow, so he disables you from getting your damage off. And if you are a sustained fighter on top of that, his ult will sustain all your damage. So that would be a direct Swain would be a direct counter for a character type like that. However, people will associate bad matchups, counters, with things that they have trouble with. For example, Riven is a really strong top laner, so is Renekton. However, very little in Riven's kit would completely hinder or just like remove the capabilities of another character. For example, like a good example is Wukong versus Riven. Wukong could struggle, but nothing inside Riven's kit will stop Wukong from doing what he does. You know? So you wouldn't say Riven's a counter, you would say Riven is super strong. You know, Riven was at the time when I wrote this ungodly strong. She got a couple of nerfs this patch. However, moving on from that, let's talk about synergies. A synergy is someone who either doubles what you're good at or covers your flaws. And an example of this would be let's say you have no gap closer, you want to lane with someone who's going to get you in there. You know, having someone like a Severe on your team with a hard engage like a Mumu will get you in that fight if you have no method of closing the gap, right? You want people like that to help you out. Another example, that would be covering someone's flaws. Another example is, let's say you're just great. You know, you have all this mobility, but you want more. You know, you wanna crush the team with your mobility. You know, you wanna be able to catch people with your mobility. If you take highly mobile and then you stick like Severe and a Shirelia's on your team, you're now amplifying what you were already good at, and that is also in a form synergy. You know, making what you're good at better also helps. So that's just two things. You can read the little description on there. Now let's talk tips and tricks. So a trick is something that you can do with a character that isn't exactly known. For example, a lot of tricks I had was I had one that was sub-target alpha striking, which was back with Ogi. You could target things within outside of Alpha Strike's initial cast range by mentally projecting Alpha Strike's 600 range around the target you're going to Alpha Strike, and then the targets around them. So if you had 3 minions in a line, if you drew your Alpha Strike's range circle around each one of them, and you saw that the lines made like Venn diagrams, you would be able to hit every single one of them in there. That was a trick that you could do as Master Yi. A tip would be a general information that could be advantageous in certain situations. For example, a tip as Master Yi would be, you can meditate while low. You know, if you meditate while low, you gain bonus health that could be used to freeze a creep wave. Well, that actually would be more of a trick. But a tip is just broad information that can help you in situations. It's kind of confusing to divide the two. You don't have to. They're both good. They're both going to be helpful. Throw them in together, just like strategies and tactics. Read this over if you just want to gain some knowledge. Okay, this one I take really, really extreme. So a big part of writing your guide is it's going to be your guide, you know? And not everyone is going to agree with your guide. This I wrote a lot here, as you can tell. There's a pretty big wall of text. But not everyone is going to agree with your guide, and that's just something you have to accept. You built the guide for you and everyone who's trying to play like you to an extent. So things you wanna do is you wanna avoid personal preferences that limit the player's ability to think. So while I just said the guide is for you, you have to remain open towards other methods inside your guide. However, as long as the only time you actually have to do that is when other methods match your role or niche that you're trying to give the players, you know? So, second, you don't have to cave into the idea that there's one build, one play style, characters must team fight, must 5v5 meta. You don't have to cave into that as long as you could justify it within the niche and role you described. However, I would, another thing people do when they write guides is sometimes they'll tell you to do something with little backing and it would be questionable. And they would just slander everything else you just thought of, you know, like if you were like, oh, how about Spirit the Elder Lizard on Mastery? Back in the day when Riggles gave lifesteal, I always found Riggles as the superior choice. And people would come to me, how come you don't go this item? I would give them reasons why. But I wouldn't just straight be like, don't go this is garbage. The only time I did that was when I had written the old AP Mastery guide. I had told people never to build Will of the Ancients. And that is because it did not grant the spell vamp. There I had a very justified reason to completely shun that item. Okay, and basically I said at the bottom, when you say something is bad, show the reader or explain why. If you are correct, it should not be hard to explain why something is bad. So, basically, another thing is you want to get your audience on page. You have to make sure they know why you're writing the guide and how you're writing it. You don't want to just throw a guide together and they're like, wait, isn't Master Yi a tank? Why aren't you building tank items? When I wrote a guide, you have your defined role in niche and you build around that. And they have to accept this, you know. I wrote a lot of guides, and my guide mentality was one-man army carry, and that was the playstyle I built my guides around, of being a one-man army and carry. So when I would tell people, oh, take blue, farm, do this, they would be a little bit confused because they're used to that 5v5 meta. However, when they followed my methods, most came back to me with success because that was just how I play. I make videos too, but I never in my guide I always taught people or tried to teach people how to team fight, even if I would recommend avoiding them, because that's still a skill they need to have to be completely competent on their character. Now I want you also avoid things that don't matter, like having players to have F on flash. Certain things you don't have to take serious. This is actually a really good read for anyone who's not sure, like what his personal preference is, what is this. But yeah, basically anytime your personal preferences interfere with the success on the character, in many situations you must drop it. For example, if your personal preference is to build Hydra on someone who solo kills, that could technically, on someone who solo kills but doesn't push creep, that could technically be a personal preference that limits success because they're losing out on damage. But, however, the Hydra active makes up for it, so that's not really a good example. But there are many times where people are like, oh yeah, I built a bloodthirst on Katarina because I like the sustain at the end. That is something that could be that could interfere with success because you're investing 3K into something that you could have got from Magic Pen or Ability Power. You know, stuff like that you might have to just drop a little bit. But again, read this over and explain stuff. This is a really difficult key to understand, so just take your time with this one. Okay, choosing your host. Now, certain things I feel close to me is I feel that you could choose whoever your host. You know, don't feel limited to Solar Mid, Law King, Mobile Fire, Law Pro, Team Liquid, and Cloth, and websites like Cloth 5 or any sort of forum you're part of is great. You know, you could get your information out there. Like I've seen some pretty good guides on Team Liquid that you would just not expect. You know, it's a forum post. You don't have to host your guides on guide websites, you know, as long as you could get your information out and teach people. So I summarized these things up. Solo Mid, I feel is a great starting point. It's stable, you know. People use it. You'll get your information out there. A good thing about Solo Mid is there's not as much rating emphasis, so meaning your rating isn't the first thing people will see. Like there are a lot of good guys. There was actually, I believe, a really good Nasus guide written by a silver player. You know, stuff like that you'll see on Solo Mid. Law King is very good in the terms that you'll get your stuff viewed and whatnot. But the community is a little scattered. They have very differentiating opinions. And your guides place a large emphasis on your rank. The first thing people are going to see is your rank. Mobile Fire is alright, it just has a really bad reputation right now. You will find that in the gutter occasion. Let's talk Law Pro though. It's pretty prestigious. The user guide section is new and monitored. The Pro is reserved for pros. And it could be hard to break into. But, you know, character guides are always in need of new owners and writers. So you can get approved for professional level guides if you're competent and you have a high rate. You will need at least a platinum rating to write for Law Pro. And even that, then they're pushing it for you. You know, they prefer their guides written by Diamond and Challenger and high level players, you know. But do not be afraid of the user guide section. It offers the same sort of format, same benefits. It's monitored. There are a lot of great admins who can help you out. All that stuff. Law Pro is where I started, and I stand by them as a great website for you to write your guides on. Okay, this is literally my favorite key because I lived by this key back when I was gold, silver, bronze, platinum, whatever. I believe when you write a guide, you should be writing it for all levels of play. Meaning, don't tell me to do something that only works against bronze. Don't tell me not to do something because it won't work against challengers. You know, you want to keep your guide open at all levels of play. You know, certain things are harder to pull, but don't remove them. So avoid certain things to avoid the "he's worse than me" clause, which is just what I was explaining. Don't say, "Oh, if you walk into melee range of Gangplank, it's 100% first blood because." Well, don't say that picking Gangplank is 100% first blood because the enemy will always walk in melee range levels 1 to 3. Instead, you may state that Gangplank is very strong early, and if they commit to an early duel, Gangplank can easily pull off first blood, which is true. So you want to avoid putting people in situations that only one thing can happen, you know. That's the "he's worse than me" clause. Because he's worse than me, I will kill him, basically. So you want your guy to cover every elo. Every player should be able to refer to your guide and learn, and if not learn, improve by reading it. So that's basically it. I've been delaying this project for months. I had it done. I just was really lazy on commentary. But I really hope you guys enjoy this. I put a lot of effort into it, and I think it would teach you guys a lot. With that, I'm going to end the video. Remember, you can pause at any point to review a slide. Don't be ashamed to. And enjoy.